What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And the beauty of the NFT space is not only being able to unlock, community, but also one of the things I think is undervalued or under stated is kind of the ability to go cross community, right? I feel we talk about a lot of people in this space having their aha moment, finding their one tribe or their one community, but I think the actual aha actually comes when you can find other projects that you have shared people in for the projects that you have your aha. And that to me is one of those things that is exciting when I start to see, like, wow, I'm jumping to this project and people that are also in a project that I'm in, another project are here as well. And I think that's kind of this like beauty of an unlock where you start, that's where the true alpha lives. And that's where you find fellow good projects and good people. And I got one of those good people with us today for, this conversation. JoeyVowels, thanks so much for jumping on. Been fun hanging out with you on Twitter Spaces across multiple channels, multiple communities, and now we got you on the pod.
Thanks, Fanzo. Appreciate it. Yeah, we unfortunately didn't get to cross paths at NFT Miami. I think because I brought my little guy who's down there on the floor with me on that Saturday, so I only stayed for I want to say like 3 hours. So I didn't really have a lot of time to meet up with people. But I know we had talked about it prior and it just didn't happen. So at least now we get to put a little face to the name action since we didn't get to meet in person. But yeah, I'm excited. You know, the current state of the market is tough, but I think being able to connect and network and partner with like-minded people is the beauty right now, right? Like there's all that kind of noise and stuff is gone, and certain people are starting to stand out and you could really connect with them.
Yeah, and I think that also kind of leads into that, like, like we started. It's funny, like a couple of days in a row, I feel like we jumped 4 or 5 Twitter Spaces, in a row together, where we were just going, hey, I'm in this Twitter space, I'm in this Twitter space, and I think that is kind of like the beauty of that. Also, love the dad life side there. You have 2 young ones, and whew, I tell you what, mine are, I'm getting teenage daughters. I have 4 days till my middle one turns 12. So I'll have 13, 12, and 9. But
Wow.
oh my goodness, little
Yeah,
ones.
I started a little late. So I have a 2-year old and a 5-month old. I had my first one at 39 and then this guy at 41.
Yeah,
So
we're like right at the same age. I'm 41. I turn 42 next month. So
I
I'm
turned 42 in August. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, we're 81. We're 81 birthdays. There we go. How
There
about
you
that?
go. Yep.
So we have that aligned.
Yep.
One of the things, I love, when getting on stages and kind of hearing different people share different part on Twitter. And I know not everyone, it's funny. I've learned recently, there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are not Twitter fans and not Twitter Spaces fans, and they use the show, and we're very thankful. We crossed over 2 million downloads, and we're so lucky that we have so many amazing people. But like, there is just like this essence of Twitter Spaces that I absolutely love, and it doesn't mean that all Twitter Spaces are good, but there are some great shows and great content, and usually if it's a great topic with like a leader that I respect, it's even more fun when I have shared voices that jump in there. And the other part of that I like is that oftentimes we might shared voices, we have different experience and projects that we are in during the NFT space. So talk to me a little bit like what brought you into the NFT space? Like what was your kind of initial entry point? I love that kind of, giving people
Yeah.
that view. And then we'll kind of go through there and kind of talk more about where we're at and where we're going.
Yeah, of course. So I jumped in quarter 3 of 2021, and it was like right when the Instagram influencer took off, right? Like every rapper, every was like, oh, come
Yep.
mint my NFT. We're going to the moon. I got you on a private jet, free Tesla, right? Like all that stuff. And I knew no one, not a single person that had owned or even talked about NFTs at that point. And I jumped in and put myself through NFT college. I spent a lot of money learning about NFTs and what not to buy and what communities to avoid and all that fun stuff. And then I was lucky enough in March of 2022 to help my tattoo artist and her husband launch an NFT project. And we successfully did that. It was a small Genesis collection of 300 pieces. is it when they look at you like that? Is there any? It's just like there's like nothing better, right?
Nothing
Yeah,
better.
buddy. Hi. Yeah. Um, and then, but yeah. So come to find out, I actually did have a friend who was into NFTs. He was really, really big into Zen Run.
Ah,
And I didn't know it at the time, but like massive. Like he got in really early, like huge stable horses, the whole thing. There was multiple times where he tried to get me on a call to like teach me about Zed Run, and I just didn't. So I never got into it. Um, come to find out, then he's also the number one merch provider in the NFT space as well.
oh
He
wow.
owns a merch company called Top Drawer Merch.
Oh
They
yeah.
started out as a they started out as a streetwear brand called Electric Family, and then they started doing merch for DJs and musicians. Next thing you know, they invented the token gated merch store, and they're doing all the merch for D Gods, Board Ape, World of Women, and on and on and on. So, but yeah, so that was my journey. Then in April of 2022, I decided that, after successfully launching that project, I was like, you know what? I'm going to join forces with a couple people I met in the space, launched an agency, worked on about 20 different projects in 2022, the whole thing, Discord, smart contracts, marketing, on and on and on. And then 2023 has been all about me. So trying to grow my personal brand, like who I am as a person, what I've done in life, my business experience, etc. And that's when I was fortunate enough to become the chief marketing officer at Tikes. Um, and that's where I am today.
Yeah, and we have a third Tikes up there on the screen. We'll talk a little bit of Tikes here in a second. I want to tie into the agency strategy consulting help launching world of 2022 was definitely a I mean, it was such an interesting realm, right? Like,
It was
and
a tough time.
yeah, it was, and especially because it was like, I mean, we had 2021 trends and ideas and things that worked, and then there was 2022 people that wanted that on the same budget with the same ideas. Yet
Yep.
we know the space. How did you find like from that side? Like, what were some of like your learnings from kind of working? Because I have that same experience, and I feel like until you're like people talk about like, you need to launch your own project, I would actually argue the people that have helped launch multiple projects for other people are probably know
Yeah.
more than just the person that launched one. And actually, Asher from Lazy Lions and he agreed with me on that because he'll message me every once in a while for like, what's going on here? What is up with this? And I'm like, yeah, it's because you're focusing on one and we have to be abroad. What were some of the things that you learned or some like maybe surprises or ahas or things that you've taken into your personal brand growth from those like agency working with, projects days?
Yeah. So, man, I can't even begin to tell you how many sad, sad phone calls I had with
Mm,
people that were like, hey, we've got this great idea, we've got this great artwork, but we have no money because I gave it all to this person and this person stole it. Like
yep.
it really, 2021, 2022, before the bear kicked in, it was the Wild West. I mean, it really was. There were people out there who bought followers, they bought Discord server members, they, bought engagement,
Many of them
they
bought a board ape so that they could have that on their logo, right? Like
yep,
that
yep,
that's a sad trend.
yep. And people were falling victim to quote unquote marketers, right? Because like you said, they had a board ape PFP.
Yep.
They had a Doodles PFP, which now nobody respects, but back then they did.
Yeah, they did right
Um,
then.
right, like, or they had a punk or whatever it was, right? And it was like, oh, I know the market because I got a board ape and I got a crypto punk, and look at my 50,000 followers and look at my engagement. And somebody would send them 5, 10, 20. I mean, I had one guy, $100,000 down the drain
Oh,
working with people that had no clue what they were doing. And that's at that moment when, which will kind of answer your question. At that moment, that's when I decided that my ethos or my brand was going to be around as much education as possible. Coming from 20 years of business experience, owning my own business, working for startups, working for multi-billion-dollar companies, like I couldn't understand why in this space people ignored what we do in everyday business. You have an interview, You ask for references. You verify the references. You ask for measurables. Like if you tell me, hey, listen, I can market your project. I'm going to get you these followers, these whatever, Discord members. This, okay, great. What projects have you already worked on? Can you show me these measurables, right? Like, how did you get to 5,000? How did you get to 10,000? How did you get to 50,000? Right? Like, we we ignored all of that because everybody wanted to, like, they were like, we got to capitalize right now. Like, NFTs are hot. Like, I got to get my project out there. Like, I'll do whatever it takes because if I just get it out there, I'm going to make $5 million, right? And they ignored all of this traditional stuff, and they got stolen, right? Like they got stolen from. And so at that point, I knew that no matter who booked a call with me, whether it turned into a client or not, I was going to educate. So I spent hours and hours on calls with people that I got paid nothing, but I provided as much value as I could to make sure that they wouldn't become another victim. And that's the biggest thing. So having had probably over 100 client calls, working on over 20 different projects, like I saw the good, the bad, the ugly, like I saw it all.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. Like we launched the agency in April, and literally that was like right when ETH
Mm.
started to do its thing, right? And but I truly believe that like our ethos of like being honest, being upfront, being transparent, educating, like all of those things are what allowed us to even get the clients we did. Because I told them, I said, listen, if anybody, because they would ask me like, they would say, okay, if I give you this $20,000 for social media marketing, um, how much? What can you guarantee us at mint? At mint, and I would say nothing, and
Right.
they would go, wait a minute, what do you mean nothing? And I would say nothing.
If anyone
They're like,
answers anything different than that, they are a fraud. Let's just be
that's what
very
I would
clear.
tell them. I said, if somebody tells you, if you give me 20 grand, I will guarantee your project sells out. They're a liar. They're gonna steal from you. You're never gonna see that 20 grand ever again. And so I call it, so in business, right? Like you call it selling against yourself,
Right.
right? So like when so like if typically salesmen don't sell against themselves, they tell you what you need to hear or what you want to hear in order to get the sale and close it. Well, I believe the best way to build rapport and sell and close somebody is to sell against yourself. So be completely brutally honest, even if that means you're like you're pushing them away,
Yep.
right? So I would sell against myself and I would tell them, listen, you give me $20,000 for marketing. The only thing I can promise you is that you will get 8 weeks, whatever the deal was. I don't remember, right? 6 weeks of social media management, design, right? Like whatever we agree to, you will get all of this. Okay. You'll get followers, you'll get Discord members, but I can't promise you'll mint a single one. Any of them will mint a single NFT because at the end of the day, it's your job when they show up to your Discord or when they follow you on Twitter to convince them that whatever it is you're offering, they need to buy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. People
If you,
forgot the adage of like great marketers get you to there. The great sales close it, right? Or the great products or services close. And they
yeah,
just make those weird assumptions. And I think it's funny when people are like, I can't believe Tom Brady didn't research FTX. And I'm like, I kind of can, because from the Tom Brady's to the person that was putting their own $30,000, like their own like savings that they had, both of them were looking at like, it's kind of crazy to think throwing out not only business best practices, but as you said, like some of like the most nuanced elements of like check references. And let's also, and we have to give a little bit of credit to these scam artists and these, and I hate to say it, but like I went through a bunch of client calls, and a majority of the people that were scamming people had a Bored Ape or a crypto punk that they've,
yep.
And which makes sense. Hey, if I can
And it
scam
was
people out of a
before,
million
but it was
bucks,
before the hexagon though.
right?
So
Before the
people
hex,
were
right?
like, people were right click saving and making their PFP a board ape that they didn't even own.
Yep. Or in their Discord, right? The Discord, they would hit up
Yep.
through Discord and have a PFP that now, and I think like, I hate to say like early adoption, like opens that up, right? Because like it's the same thing in social media. When I got into social media, we had my first agency. Like I was blown away that like really all I got was the leftover. People went to other agencies and were sold, I will grow your Twitter account by this many followers. They went and bought those followers 5 days before the end of the contract. And then people were like, I can't believe it didn't convert. And like I was like, I guess I was like maybe shocked and a little bit like I was like an eye-opening experience for me, like 2011, 2012, social media marketing, when I realized, wow, a lot of these agency owners are just really great at being like kind of like that, like scammy, because there was no benchmark, there was no way to measure. But like
Yep.
weirdly in this space, I feel like if people were true collectors before they were launching their projects, don't you feel like they would have saw like some? Because I feel like that was also part of it,
Yep.
where so many people that were, I'm
But
curious
they
on your side
weren't.
too, right? Like
They
they weren't,
weren't.
right? They
They
saw,
didn't spend they didn't spend 3 to 6 months in the NFT space
yep,
seeing what works, what doesn't work, what is a scam, what isn't a scam. Like people ask me, I didn't say it earlier, but people ask me, when did you join the NFT space? And I say during the used car salesman era. Because that's literally what it was, right? Like
yes,
if you look at like Q3, Q4 of 2021 and Q1 of 2022, it was the used car salesman of NFTs. It was, hey, mint my NFT for a chance. Like, what's his name from Migos? Minted Apes in Space,
oh yeah,
and he was giving away a trip on a rocket
yep,
to space with him. Right. Then there was, you could win a free Tesla. You can get a
yeah.
ride on a private jet. You could
You
win
could
a
bow you
vacation.
might Floyd Mayweather would train with you, right? And then
Yeah, like there was all this, and it's all the slimy, sleazy sales techniques that people would use to get you to buy, right? And everybody was hoping they would get one of those 10 one of ones, right? And all this, I mean, like it was so bad. And it was the same for the marketers, right? Who were lucky enough to mint a couple bored apes, flip them, make a couple $100,000, and now they're experts,
yep.
right? I'm an expert because I was here early. No, you're not an expert. You don't know what you're doing. Like tradition, like I talk about this all the time on Spaces. There's a thing called a marketing funnel. It's like it is. I don't care what industry you're in. It is, you should be following it to a T, right? How
Yep.
do you get your consumers down to the point to where they become your advocates? They become your sales force because they genuinely love what you're doing, right? And people would ignore it. It was all about like hype and how fast can you mint out and floor
Well, and
price go up, and
speculation being rewarded didn't help either, don't you think? Like,
no,
like
it
that,
didn't.
like people that delivered on their roadmap saw floor prices go down. People that delayed and add speculation saw floor prices going up. And talking about like
We say it all the time, announcement for the announcement.
yeah, which is, and like I mean, I heard it twice today, and like I'm excited. Like my actually, you said Miami. Like I got to actually hang out with Lucas from Pudgy Penguins for the first time, and I would say like and I openly will say like I wasn't like a I was a fan of like the project, but I wasn't a huge fan of his from a Twitter space perspective. I didn't get his vibe, but like after connecting with him in Miami, getting to see him and hear his vision in person, I was actually like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I like he has like some of these like commitments, and he's young and energy. But the funny thing about that, like the reason I bring up the Punchy Penguins piece was like I remember that like time that you're talking about. And for those that are listening, right, like that's the first 100 episodes of this podcast, right? We launched November 11th, 11/11/21. And if you just listen to that, go back and listen to those episodes where I'm giving best practice and advice, and I'm getting on and saying I still don't understand why this one minted out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, like West Coast Customs was one of my favorite projects, and they did everything by the book and everything correct. And it's West Coast Customs from like MTV, West Coast
Yeah.
Customs those days, huge brand. They were building a game forever, and they could not mint out. Like they ended up stringing the supply. And then we'll put this on the record. I still believe they will have one of the best games that launches this year. And everyone will have to go back to these episodes where I was like, these guys, I mean, they had a funnel, they understood communication, they didn't demand you had to be in the Discord. It was the only way you could get announcements. And I'm curious your take on, I think this idea of like if everybody was an owner, there was kind of both problems, right? Where we had impatient people that wanted ownership stake but didn't want to take ownership responsibility. And then we had ownerships of projects that were like treating everyone like, oh, if you missed the announcement in Discord, you're screwed. where else in business do we say, hey, you bought a service from us that we're going to deliver, and you must come to our one communication channel,
Yeah.
which, let's face it, Discord is like still a pain of all pains
Yeah.
for this space.
It's definitely an entry barrier.
Yeah. And so now there's like the talk, and we'll kind of jump around a little bit, but the talk is like we are weeding that out of this space. I'm not so sure, especially in this
No.
coin environment right now. Like, what's your take
No.
on, like, because we still have speculation, used car
Yep.
salespeople, and we've also this weird um misalignment on like who people want to work with. And I'll say, like, I was working with a coin to kind of come up with a strategy, and the people they wanted to work with, I kind of advised against. Another coin launched and worked with those people, and they blew up successfully. So, like, for me, like, in that, because like I love where you said, like, kind of regrounding on the ethics and selling against yourself, but like the frustrating part of that is right now that's still not extremely being rewarded. And I mean, what the hell do we do about that?
So to rewind to what you said ear earlier, which will tie it in, is you have to remember that during the bull run, everybody was an alpha caller, right? Everybody, you
Yep.
literally you could just close your eyes and put your finger on a project and it was going to mint out and the floor price is probably going to go up, right?
Yep.
So what it did was is this it created this network of influencers that are not really influential. And what's happening now is they're still riding that wave of success to where people will listen to whatever they say. And to be honest, and it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, but nothing will change until regulation happens.
Agreed.
It just,
100%.
I talk about this in spaces and I comment on people's tweets when they talk about decentralization. I challenge every person that's watching this, go Google anarchy, then Google decentralization and overlay the definitions. Okay.
Yep.
They're not
Or go
word.
watch there's a documentary called The Anarchists. I believe it's on Hulu. Fascinating, and it's early crypto days, but it's all decentralized maxis
Yeah.
and trying to overthrow the government. That anarchy side of it, and
Yeah.
you're spot on.
They're not word for word, but if you read them with an open mind as to what we kind of talk about decentralization as, and then you go think about like the definition of anarchy, you're like, holy shit, you're right. Right. So like it's not possible to your point about like why are people getting rewarded that shouldn't get to be rewarded when people are ethical and they have strong roadmaps and they're really delivering, right? At this point, like it's really difficult to weed out those bad actors. And like for example, you talked about coins 2 weeks ago, it was jugs,
Yep.
right? And so like it's really difficult to move past that and take the next step into, like, let's call it NFT 2.0,
Yep.
right? The next phase of this, if we don't have regulation that holds people accountable when they're doing things that are detrimental. So, for example, we'll use jugs. 2 weeks ago, jugs was it's for those that don't know, it's illegal to spin up a coin in America. You
Yep.
cannot you cannot launch a token in America. It's illegal. It's a violation of the SEC and Federal Trade Commission and blah blah whatever agency you could think of, right? This person admitted to violating those laws, spinning up jugs, making money, rugging, whatever. Okay. Now, until we get to a place where I don't know if it would be Ethereum or who, right, says, okay, if you want to spin up a token, there needs to be some type of KYCing. We need to verify. Like, so for example, if you're going to launch a token with a liquidity pool and blah, 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 you need to have maybe some specific percentage in the wallet that's opening this token, right? Like there needs to be something that puts like their skin in the game,
Yep.
right? Same with NFT projects.
Are you familiar with
Excuse me.
the Wen token that just launched
Yeah, I
this
got a
week
bunch of free Wen
from
token.
from Wenman? I actually think
Yeah.
they're doing it right now. the price isn't, like if you look at their white paper, their rollout, the way that their 10% allocation, they're doing the
Yep.
claim.
I
They
got like
also,
690,000, and then I get so many over the next like
yeah,
three
they're doing like,
weeks or
yeah, every
something.
day. Yeah, every day
Yeah.
it occurs. I actually think they're doing it right, but I think the problem with doing it right, which ties back into the NFT, a problem with doing
Floor
it right,
price don't go up.
floor price don't go up. And talking about like and I struggle. I like my team will laugh when Drew will be listening to this, and like I struggle reconciling, like in my head, if I have to like align or understand to play a game, there are some people that I will just have to kind of have to deal with, because if they're playing the game, floor price go up, and like that to me is such a struggle. But there also is something to be said on like, if we're not playing that game, we're getting wrecked, right? Like
Yeah,
it
I
is.
missed out on Pepe.
Yep, yeah, me as I did as well. Even though I was with Spotty Wi-Fi, and Spotty Wi-Fi the day before, and he was talking about like, "Hey, I got this call. I think it's gonna be." And like the day it happened, I messaged him like, "You're putting your brand aligned with Pepe." I'm like, I don't know enough about, and I completely balked. The next day, I put it into our like alpha chat that we had, and my community jumped on it. We had a couple people that went like heavy, thousands of $60,000. One person put in Pepe like real early, like day 3, and they made it. They made out. I just avoided it, and I will say until I watched the documentary and I kind of have a better perspective of Pepe. But I missed it on that. So I guess the bigger piece of this from like a conversation, and it ties into Tikes, is that like it's why I've kind of leaned in even on this podcast of like referencing projects and people that have a business foundation, that already understand content and community and sales. And let's face it, they have skin in the game beyond like, even with their name. And I have to give a shout out to, one of my like favorite listeners and good friend of both of ours, Justin Lima. Justin is a rock star, and
Yep.
Justin early with Tikes was coming to me and being like, Fanzo, and we minted Tikes into our Mint 365 collection. So it was, I bought an NFT every single day for a year, and the Tikes drop is in our collection. So I like to say I at least knew on launch day. It's mainly
Yeah.
because I knew Ryan. Ryan and I had shared a couple of stages in the past, but was part of like the attraction for what Tikes is building, and you joining that on that team as well. The fact that like we know that floor price doesn't have to go up early in that project
Yep.
for it to be valuable for holders and be good for your brand. Talk to me about how like that kind of works, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that can figure. A lot of people I know that are listening to this are figuring out where to spend their time and who to align with from like projects and things that are in a bag, and it's a lot tougher than people are kind of wanting to kind of
Oh,
let
it's
know.
so much. I mean, so let's be honest. You can play the game and make a lot of money.
Right.
I have nothing against flippers. To
Yep. Me
me,
neither.
I think flippers and degens is the wrong thing to call them. I
Right.
think it's degrading. They don't deserve it. They're no different than a day trader who trades stocks.
Agreed.
No different. And those guys are so well, and girls are so well respected and get praised when they make a lot of money. I
Right.
don't know why in our space, like flippers and degens are looked at so negatively. To me, they're just NFT day traders, right? They're putting their bag at risk because they're taking a chance, they read a chart, they saw momentum, whatever. More power to them. I've tried it. I don't have the time. It's I just physically don't have the time to sit in front of my computer and like, okay, listings are going up, sales are going down. Okay, sell. Right? Like I just don't have that time. So I'm not a trader. It's not who I am. With that being said, so yes, there is money to be made. You can go
Yep.
do that. I don't look down on you for it. For me though, because I don't have the time to do that, I try to look for projects that I believe will be here 5, 10, 20 years from now, right? Like I if you look at my what I hold, I do hold some stuff, but it's because I didn't sell when I was supposed to and I got stuck holding it.
Yeah. Me too.
Um like I don't hold any, like I hold one little pudgy, and it was because I screwed up and didn't sell when I was supposed to. So now I'm stuck kind of waiting, hoping that it goes back up and then I can sell it, right? Like I have all of season 1 of Seize the Meebs, which is an art collection.
Yep.
There's no value there. It's just art. I thought the art was really cool. I got into it. I have a little issue with when I start something I can't finish. So I had to collect the whole season, right? Um, there's just not a lot in there. Most of what I have, yeah. But anyway, so the point is that like I don't hold any quote unquote IP NFTs, right?
Mm.
Like, so I don't hold Sappy Seals, Pudgy Penguins, Doodles, D Gods, Utes. I don't hold any of them because, in my opinion, they've yet to show me what will make them be here 5 and 10 years from now. Now,
Mm.
they might be working on something, which is part of what you talked about, which is communication, right? They might be working on something that creates a sustainable source of revenue, that rewards their holders, that will see them in 5 or 10 years. I don't see it yet, right? And to be honest, I don't see it with Yuga yet either, right? Like,
Nope.
people go, oh, but they've got other side and they've got this. Listen, the only thing that Yuga has successfully done to this point is keep giving away free NFTs.
That made
That's
people
it.
money. Yep. That's
That's
pretty
it.
much it. Yep.
And people get mad at me about it, but like, here's the thing.
It's truthful.
I guarantee if you polled, I don't know, like 1,000 Bored Ape holders, would they buy a Bored Ape at 50 ETH right now?
Yep.
I bet you 90% would say no. And you
Nope.
know why? Because I've talked to them and I've asked them myself. They won't, because the reality is, at this point, the only chance you have of getting into Bored Ape at 50 ETH and making your money back at all is if somehow you network with somebody who maybe gives you a job, or like, because it's not through NFTs anymore. Like, if you got a Bored Ape early on for, like, let's say 5, 10, 20 ETH, you probably have made money
Right.
between the mutant, between the dog, between the ape coin, between the other side, between the sewer passes, the Maras, the other, like there was you. But at this point, I'm not involved in any of those projects, not because I can't afford a Pudgy Penguin or anything like that. I can't afford a Bored Ape. I'm going to be completely honest. I
Yeah. I
do
can't
really
either.
well. I'm considered like top 10% in America when it comes to like income, and I can't afford a Bored Ape.
Yep.
Um, so, and I'm not flexing, by the way. I'm just saying, like, that
No,
shit's
I'm
too
with you.
expensive. It's too expensive. Like, the price has to normalize at some point, right?
Yep.
Like, but anyways, the point is that, like, with Tikes, the reason why I got into Tikes is because I want to create generational wealth for my family in a way that is sustainable,
Mm.
right? So, could you have hit on Pepe and made $1 million? Sure. You're going to pay a shit ton of taxes depending on where you live, right? Like, or you're not going to take it out and you're going to keep it as ETH and probably spend it on a bunch of shit. And then who knows,
Yep.
right? Who knows what happens, right? But like, but I wanted to be part of a project when I minted like 6 months ago, because I knew that real estate, investing in businesses, networking with high net worth people was a great way for me to further my career and try to create some generational wealth for my family. So that's why I did it. And yes, you're right. Our floor price peaked at like 2.75 maybe, or 3 ETH, like post mint out, because everybody was like, oh shit, what's this project? And they're buying up the floor and whatever. And now it's down to like zero point 0.4,
Right.
right? But that's because people don't, if you're not in the project, you really don't know what's happening, right? Like, you don't know that there's we have Tycoin, which is not backed by a liquidity pool. It's just a simple ERC20 token that you will be able to use to invest in businesses.
Right.
So you will get real percentage ownership in a business as if you gave away 10, 50, $100,000, but with a coin that has technically no value, right? We have our marketplace where you can go to events like WealthCon, where you've got some of the biggest real estate and financial investors in the country coming to speak to you. You can stay in an Airbnb, right? We call them Tikes shares. There's
Yeah.
Tikes shares all over the country you could stay in with Tycoin. We have every week we have educational sessions on buying and selling, so land flipping, right? Like, how do you identify a good deal with land? How do you then get financing for it? How do you sell it, right? We have education sessions on how to utilize AI with real estate. Justin, who you mentioned, hosts a wellness wealth session about nutrition and exercise. We teach people how to get financing for deals with no money down, and not even using your own money, right? Like,
Mm.
using other people's money, right? So there's so much value being built in the project, and we have some tech we're working on. Um, but like, those are the kind of projects that I'm interested in, that are going to take this technology and really like push it forward. I could care less. No offense, you mentioned Luca and Pudgy Penguins. I could care less about a toy penguin.
Right.
I just like the chances of that toy penguin becoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Gary V is working to do that with his army of what he has, and it's still an uphill battle for
Yeah,
V Friends IP, right? Like, I think that's where I think some people get lost in that, like, in that piece of it. I also think, one of the things with Tikes and, and Justin Lima and the team that is there, the NFT and the tokens are part of the equation, but it unlocks all of the other parts of the
it's the
equation, right?
networking.
Right.
It's
And
the
that's,
by far, like people say they joined Board Ape because of the networking, right? And I'm not a holder, so I
yeah,
can't tell you
let's
what the
face it, they
networking
joined
is.
it for the association of being associated with other people,
Yeah,
not for the networking.
correct, correct. I mean, there are some people like look at DGen Network, right? Like those
Yep.
guys they all met in Board Ape, they got together, they created DGen Network, right? Like so, there are some success stories, but the reality is when you get into a project like Tikes, all those utilities I mentioned, and there's more, are cool, but like I'm going to Cabo in June. It's all of Ryan. So Ryan Pineda is the founder. It's all of
Yep.
his company. It's his like yearly company trip. So Pineda Capital, Wealthy Way, Wealthy Kingdom, all these companies he owns. He owns an accounting firm. He owns all these multi-million dollar companies. They're all going. And then all of our, not all, it's anybody that wanted to go, right? We've got like 50 or so people from Tikes going, and we're all going to Cabo to hang out and network. We just had a guy, him and another young lady, they met in Tikes.
Mm.
They got help from our land flipping guy, and they just closed on a deal for 420 acres
Woo.
that they're going to decide whether they want to develop, parcel off and sell, flip, right? Like so that's why you join a community like Tikes, right? It's the ability to like we did a survey of like how many people have worked with another Tike holder since becoming a Tikes member, and we've only been around like 8 months. We've already had like 25 people already work with other people on deals, whether it's investing, real estate, etc. That's why you join. Like, why do you pay to join? Like I used to be an entrepreneur and I would join South Florida entrepreneurs and I would pay
Right.
like $5,000 or $10,000 a year to once a month meet with other entrepreneurs, right?
Yep.
So
Well, and I think that's also a generation thing, right? Like, I think our age was kind of the last group that like looked at that. Like, and I will say that, like, I joined National Speakers Association in 2014, and then I wrote them this ridiculously long letter of why I think it's a joke and that I was paying to hang out with old white guys. And I literally, like, I mean, I bashed the hell out of it in 2015. I give them a lot of credit, is they like literally line by line took a lot of my advice, came back to me and said, this is how we're doing to change it. And I ended up joining in 2016. I'm still a member now, but like, to your point, like, there is that, like, what does that like alignment mean? I'm curious. Tikes is a great one. Were you familiar with Ryan prior to? I'm guessing
yeah.
you knew Ryan before
So I've
Web3.
I've yeah, because I've always kind of been into real estate. So I
Okay.
stumbled across Ryan like months before that and was following him with real estate. It's like, listen, it's one of the oldest sayings in the world, right? Your network is your net worth.
Right.
And the other one is what if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the
Yeah.
wrong
In
room,
the
right?
wrong
Like
room.
so,
Right. Yep.
right? Like so, like for example, the COO of Tikes, his name is Amr. He owns a design firm,
Mm.
and incredibly successful. And we were texting, and I was like, "Hey, do you have time to catch up today to talk about some of the stuff that we have in the pipeline?" He's like, "Sorry, I'm in Paris," and I was like, "Oh." He's like, "I'll text you when I get home," and I was like, "He's like, yeah, I just kind of like to travel," and I'm like, but those are the people that I want to be associated with, right?
Right.
Like Ryan was took his family for a week to the Dominican, right? And played golf. He was on the golf course shirtless with no shoes, like playing golf, like drinking fresh coconuts right from the tree. Like that like so you have to decide, and I tell people this all the time that like come to me and ask for advice about like building their brand or building their business. I go, you have to decide what your pot of gold is,
Yep.
right? Like what is it at the end of the rainbow that you want?
Yep.
And then walk back across that rainbow and visualize everything that helped get you to that pot of gold. Go backwards, like go in
That's,
reverse.
I mean, our podcast audience knows that. So the song for this show, the intro, outro, It starts with you must define success. And I like hammer that home because if you don't even define success, you're never going to figure out what the hell was successful anyhow. Right. And you'll
Yep.
also never be able to map something out. Like I love, like, and reverse engineering from success backwards make a lot of sense. I, I'm, I'm also curious. So for a lot of people, I know that like there is an element of like getting in this space for like the quick flip or the money, or maybe the IP was attractive. But then most of us we got stuck holding a bag, right? And now there's
Ugh,
like hesitation to like, how do I get in to something else, or like how do I know that that's also not going to be there? And I'll say there's a
research.
couple, Coalition Crew is another one that is built very much like Tikes. I would say Bulls and Apes Project.
Yep.
It does a lot with like,
Gentlemen's Gents Croquet Club, right? Or
yep,
something is another
yeah,
one.
that's a good one. There is one I want to throw out. You mentioned you helped a tattoo piece. Have you heard of the Meta Tattoo Club? Have you heard of them?
No, but
It
see, I've
they're my
spoken to
only
multiple.
they're my only
Go ahead.
Solana NFT that is above mint from when
Okay.
I minted. Like literally, and
Every salon FT I bought was a rug.
I have
Like
like
it was just so bad.
68 projects in my Solana wallet that I had like for a while was kind of I loved ETH, but I was like obsessed with like the weird barrier there and the tech. But Meta Tattoo Club, we're gonna get them on the pod. I just messaged them today. They actually they've created a tool for tattoo artists around the world to be able to put on like you can look on the map and it'll show you can put your calendar, and it's free
That's
for
pretty
any
cool.
tattoo artist to sign up, and people can just, hey, I'm going to be flying in the town, and you can book people
That's
via
awesome.
remote. It has like some really cool things. But what I found like in these examples, right, where, and I guess this is the question I had for you, can someone without a existing successful business or successful community or successful audience, can they launch an NFT project in 2023 and be successful? Like where do you think?
Yeah. So I think so. One thing I harp on all the time is you need experience, right?
Mhm.
So like I use the National Geographic launch and the National Lampoon's launch, like all these failed big Web 2
Yep.
brands, I always use them as an example. You have to spend 6 months at least living, eating, breathing, sleeping, and just absorbing, right? Like there's a reason why most people, before they get a real job, they do an internship,
Yep.
right? Like if you like I didn't just go own a business, right? Like I went to business school. I spent a lot of time doing mock businesses. Like we went to mock
Yeah.
business like this is before cell phones and internet, right? Like so
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
would
We
actually
can relate. Like, I know that. I
yeah,
know that
like
time
you'd
very
you'd
well.
actually go to like you would go to a university and they would set up this event where you would be given a product, right, or a business, and over
Yep.
the course of like 2 or 3 days, you develop marketing plans and strategies and operations and how do you set your price and right, like, and then at the end they had like whatever computer algorithm that would calculate like who got the most sales and made the most money based on your price and your margin, right? Because everybody would set their price different or spend money on, right? So I that's all I did, right? Before I ever, and my father owned businesses. Like I had a ton of experience before and my first business was a failure. It
Right.
failed, right? But I spent 5 years learning what not to do and some of the things I should do, which then allowed me to go work for other startups and start other businesses. And right. So if you're not spending at least 6 months to a year just entrenched in NFTs and in this space, especially because it moves so fast, the meta is constantly changing, right? Like, so you got to spend 6 to 12 months just entrenched in this space. You also have to understand that, like, it's really hard. Like people get really discouraged. Like that's the other thing too. Like there was a point when I launched my agency where we had nothing. Like we had no leads, we had nothing. We were just sitting there with nothing to do. But like I knew that I wasn't going to give up, right? So like it can, like you said, it can be really discouraging when you see some influencer launch a meme coin and now he's worth $5 million. Ben, sorry.
Yep.
Um
Yep.
um, right? And then you're trying to do the right thing. And so you got to have really thick skin. You have to have like this drive that like no matter what happens, you're gonna get through it. And listen, it might sound shitty, but take some jobs as a Discord moderator,
Yeah.
take some jobs, like take some shit jobs in NFT projects just to see behind the curtain a little, right? To understand like how it works,
Yeah, or
right?
doesn't
Like,
work, right? Like
yeah, or it
you get
doesn't
you
work.
get a lot of you get a lot of insight there,
Like,
and I think
so you know how I got my job at Tikes?
how yeah I
I
don't know that.
spent so I spent 6 months as a Tikes holder just watching.
Hmm.
I watched every announcement. I watched the communication. I watched the social media posts. And then they made a decision about some stuff. And I was like, hey, listen, I really don't, I don't think the decisions you're making are going to help move the project in a direction that will make us sustainable long term in Web3. The
Hmm.
decisions you're making are very Web2 heavy. And this project right now is like 99% Web2 people. If you want to be a blockchain company, you need to make decisions that will bring on more Web3 people and really focus on the blockchain, right? And there was a lot of messages back and forth, but that was the gist of it. Then Ryan's like, hey, let's DM.
Hmm.
Okay, for those that don't know, Ryan has 300,000 YouTube subscribers, 300,000 followers on Instagram. He has 7 multi-million-dollar companies. He doesn't need to talk to me,
Right.
right? But one of Ryan's greatest qualities is that he wants to surround himself with people. And this is something my dad taught me when I was really young. He wants to surround himself with people that know what he doesn't know
Yeah.
because he knows that he doesn't need to know everything, right? So, for those that didn't catch that,
Yep.
surround yourself with people that know what you don't know so you don't have to spend time learning everything else,
The
right?
first problem with that is most people aren't willing to admit what they don't know, right? Like
Correct.
that is the they like because it's a whole other game to find the people. But you're right,
Yep.
and I give Ryan a lot of that credit because someone from his acumen, the success, the kind of like the pedigree that he kind of has, his own reputation and brand is very like I mean I mean I think we were on stage together 2015 at an event, and I remember even at that point like his brand was launching, but his businesses were already kind of had already
Yep.
taken off from the success side. But I love that he jumped on a call with
Yeah,
you
he
based
got on
on
a
your feedback.
DM, got on a call, got on a Zoom. Next thing you know, within 6 weeks, it's like, hey, do you want to be the chief marketing officer? Right.
Nice
And we've talked about this on like spaces. I think you've been on about like the difference between FUD
yep.
and like action, because you made the
Feedback.
comment. Yeah, you made the comment about like how people want to be owners, right? But they're not really owners. And then the owners are the owners but don't really want to be the owners, right? So like there's this really weird dynamic with NFTs where the holders really don't have ownership. You're not an investor, you have no ownership, but they're very outspoken. And then you've
Yep.
got the founders that are the owners that have the ownership, but they don't know what they're doing, right? But the problem is if you're not communicating again, this goes back to the end of the rainbow, right? So if you as a holder don't like what you're seeing in a project, right? Now you have to say, okay, how do I speak up? What do I want at the end of the rainbow? I want at the end of the rainbow for this project to do better on Twitter, do better,
Yep.
to to be better on Twitter,
Yeah.
right? That's what I want, right? Because I think that's where we're failing. Okay, now what do I need to say as you walk across that rainbow? What do I need to say in order to give my opinion to this project in a way that they're actually going to listen to me? So that way, that pot of gold, which is being better on social media, happens. Most people just start, we're going to zero, my bag, and blah, right? So instead, I took the approach of, and that's probably because I'm a little older and I have some experience, right? But I took the approach of, hey, listen, here's some really constructive, specific feedback of how, and here's some things I think we could do differently. And I think that, like, to your point about launching a project and founders, right? You have to be willing to take constructive criticism because you don't know everything. It's a fact. There's not a single person in this world, not even Elon Musk. There's a reason why he's hiring a CEO at Twitter and he's becoming the CTO,
Right.
right? So like you have to understand you don't know everything. You have to understand that you don't want to surround yourself with yes people. They are the absolute worst people you can hire. People that are just going to yes every decision you make. You're not going to build a successful business. And then to the point of like the holders, like don't be afraid to speak up, but you need to speak up in a way that will achieve the desired result.
Right.
Being nasty and being negative will never get you the desired result. right? And same thing for founders. Like Poopy is
Well,
a great
let's face it.
example.
Right now, people do. They're nasty because they want their desired result is attention, right?
Floor
Like,
price go up.
yeah, or just like right
Yeah,
now, this ledger thing that came out today, like
yeah.
the obnoxious aspect that people are not even willing to research because they would
Yep.
rather get attention for being loud about something they don't even freaking know or
Oh, they were
understand.
all fudding it and they had no clue.
No clue. Oh my god, I was fired up today.
No
Today
clue.
was a
Yeah,
man.
no
It
clue.
was so. I'm so for our listeners. I think with Tikes, there's a the other side of this that I think will kind of bring this whole episode together on is there's also people that will say, well, Brian, I want to look for the next Tikes because it's hard to jump into a project mid steam or if I missed what was going on. How are you guys approaching that from a Tikes perspective on onboarding people existing now, making them feel well? Like, I know you guys have a Twitter space that I love to join, and that's also like for anyone that wants to test out these communities. There's lots of great those that I think are good are doing content on a regular basis that have access to the people on a regular basis, and also their people are pretty active. But how are you guys looking at that? Because I think that's also something that most projects haven't figured out yet. Even the projects that people love is like, that's cool that you were in there early or you were in there, pre, where we're at now. Like, how are you approaching like onboarding and welcoming new people?
Well, I think what people need to understand is the projects that are trying to build long term, you're never too late, right? So were like if you invested in Amazon in 2020, were you too late?
Right.
Right?
That's a good point.
If
I like that.
if I said invest in Amazon in 2010 and you ignored me and then you invested in 2020, right? So it's a little different, right? I'm not saying NFTs are investments, right? But what I'm using that analogy because if it's a project that you truly believe is building something that will be here 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're never too late. If you're just looking for a short-term flip, that's a different conversation,
Right.
right? You're probably too late for Pudgy Penguins or
Well, and they're
whoever,
probably not
whatever.
listening. They're probably not listening to this podcast because that's
Correct,
that's
right?
not where we
Yeah.
go on this one, right?
So
For the most part.
so for me, what I love about Tikes is how open Ryan is to innovating and doing new things. And I think that's what's important. Like we just announced a partnership with Meta Athletes where Meta Athletes are going to get access to our server and be able to come to all of our training sessions and vice versa. I have a call with another project this week where we're going to try to do something similar where they want to offer their holders access to our real estate courses and things like that. So there's it's there are people out there that are genuinely trying to provide something of value, and I don't want people to think I'm that guy that constantly like shits on IP projects, but like you have to really consider like what is your pot of gold? Is it just to flip and make money, or is it to because listen, you really are investing. When you buy an NFT, you're investing in those founders, right? Like when I buy a Pudgy Penguin for 5 ETH, I'm buying it at 5 ETH because there's something about Luca or what they're building that tells me by spending 5 ETH, let's say 10 grand, I know I'm going to get $10,000 of value back, right? So that's what you really have to consider. So we're constantly trying to we just launched Tyke Tank where our holders can submit opportunities, whether it's real estate or businesses, for us to for Tikes to invest in and also allow our holders to invest in with Tycoin, right? So we're constantly trying to do things that give new people an opportunity. I know what you mean. I just joined On Chain Monkey. I only
Mhm.
have 100 bananas. They're like people with millions of bananas, right? And I'm like with my little 100 bananas. What am I gonna do with my little 100 bananas? So I get it, right? Like sometimes you're joining late and you're kind of left behind and all this stuff like that. But I think that for me, whenever I talk to people about looking at projects that they want to get involved in, I think ethos is huge. Get involved with projects that share your general human values, right? And then the other thing is take some time to talk to the community. Before I bought an on-chain monkey, I spent months interacting with people that had on-chain monkey PFPs and
Yep.
DMing and building a rapport. And I was like, you know what? I'm willing to spend 0.35 or whatever it was I bought this on chain. I'm willing to take that money and spend it because every person I've interacted with, every person I've had a conversation with or asked questions about has been the type of person that I would genuinely want to go have a beer with. So,
Right.
you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what happens. Maybe it goes up. Maybe it goes down. It doesn't matter. I know that I joined a community of people that share like what I value. So, it's the market's going to change, people. It's going to
Yep.
change, right? Like we're going to move to a place where the technology and the real world use cases will start to surpass the value of just what your PFP looks like. I don't
Which
know
is
when.
exciting. I think it's exciting, and that's an
Yeah,
exciting time to get there, right? And I think, yeah, I think for to tie this back to where I kicked this off on like the initial monologue, right? Like, I mean, finding the people that you want to continue to ally with that are growing your network, right? Like, I feel like like on Chain Monkey. I actually we had one of the people on the team on the podcast season one, and I didn't have a lot of people that I knew that in that space. And then the more people that I connect in a couple of projects that I like, they're very active in On Chain Monkey, right? So like my exposure to On Chain Monkey increased. You mentioned meta athletes. To me, that's one of the great. I was been Drew is my business partner. Drew's the founder of Meta Athletes, and when we started that, it was an IP Major League Baseball player founded artist project, and we couldn't find it took a while to find the grassroots of realizing, wow, this community is about high performers connecting with coaches. It has some of the best high performer coaches. I know there's a massive amount of our audience are
yeah.
MA holders, and like now MA is doing partnerships with like projects like Tikes, and I think like to me this is also like one of those things that people want to look for is like also look at like where are doors that you can connect, right? If you're a holder of a project
Look
and
at
you have two
Justin.
projects you like why not bridge those gaps and connect
Justin's
those
a perfect
dots?
example.
Yep.
Justin can, like you said, Justin earlier. Justin knew that Tikes and meta athletes would get along great, and he introduced us. Right? Like,
And to be
that's your
clear,
point exactly.
Justin's a holder of each, right? Like and like mad love to just like he's a I mean a huge fan of his. Like he's buying a bunch of my art. He's a big
Yep.
supporter, and we and I think he is one of those. He's a perfect example of a person that is a good person that's doing kicking ass at his full time job and doing the things that he does. But he's also one of those holders that is like, I'm gonna make these communities I'm a part of the best they can be, and I'm gonna add what I can to it. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good lesson for everyone here. I think unfortunately sometimes it feels like if you're not a CMO or founder or CEO of a project, like what impact can I make or who can I use something with? And so Joey, this was a hell of a lot of fun. Love having you on. For everyone listening, like to me, this is like Joe and I connecting is like the exact example of this as well. And
Yep.
excited for where Tikes is going. Hopefully, we'll get Ryan on the pod in the near
I will
future as
definitely.
well.
I'll ask him. He'll
I
definitely
think
do
he
it. He
has a
loves it.
link in his DMs. He had messaged me and
Yeah.
just said send him a DM, but we'll get him on to
Yeah.
talk more Tikes. But
I will. I
Joey,
will say one last thing I
yep,
want to say because we met on Spaces and I was hosting a Spaces one day and an older gentleman like in his 70s jumped in my Spaces like I just sold my business and I'm getting into like Web3 and NFTs. He was like, "Do I have to own an NFT to be a part of a community?" And I said, "No, just be here."
yep,
This is the example, right? Like we happen to always, and it's funny because no matter the spaces I join, it's always kind of like the same people because we all genuinely share the same ethos, right? Like we
yep.
we we surround ourselves with those same people. So like you don't have to buy an NFT to be part of a community. You can just come on Twitter, jump in some Twitter spaces with people that you connect with, and next thing you know, like you just never know. Like you look at like Riggs is a great example.
Yeah,
Riggs
Griggs.
now has a job in Web3,
Yep.
right? Like, and like you don't have to be a founder, you don't have to be a CMO, you don't have to be a community manager. Like, just be present, be authentic, provide value, and you never know, something cool could really happen.
I love it. I love it. And you also, you brought on your son, so I think is now the youngest, part-time guest of the podcast. That your little one got on there, and I know you have to get back to the family. Joey, thanks so much for hanging out. We'll put the links to the Tykes in the show notes. We'll put links to Joey's Twitter. Great follow, great content. Someone that I know that if a space is going on and Joey's in there, that I can go in there, have value. Probably both going to raise our hands because we both like to
Yep,
talk and share our
we do.
opinions and bring the hype. So, Joey, thanks so much for
I
joining the
appreciate
podcast.
you, man.
For everybody listening, until next episode, make it a great day, everybody. Cheers.